Welcome to the 1000 Nights and 1 Night. Now, when it was the 908th night, she continued, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when the king asked, And what is the story of the twain? The Wazir answered, Give ear, O king, to the tale of the spider and the wind. A spider once attached himself to a high gate, and retired and span her web there, and dwelt therein in peace, giving thanks to the Almighty, who had made this dwelling place easy to her, and had set her in safety from noxious reptiles. On this wise she abode a long while, still giving thanks to Allah for her ease, and regular supply of daily bread, till her Creator bethought him to try her, and make essay of her gratitude and patience. So he sent upon her a strong east wind, which carried her away, web and all, and cast her into the main. The waves washed her ashore, and she thanked the Lord for her safety, and began to upbraid the wind, saying, O wind, why hast thou dealt thus with me, and what good hast thou gotten by bearing me hither from a biding place, where indeed I was in safety, secure in my home on the top of that gate? Replied the wind, saying, O spider, hast thou not learned that this world is a house of calamities? And say me, who can boast of lasting happiness, that such portion shall be thine? Wottest thou not that Allah tempteth his creatures in order to learn by trial what may be their powers of patience? How then doth it beset thee to upbraid me, thou who hast been saved by me from the vasty deep? Thy words are true, O wind, replied the spider, yet not the less do I desire to escape from this stranger land into which thy violence hath cast me. The wind rejoined, Cease thy blaming, for right soon I will bear thee back, and replace thee in thy place as thou wast before. So the spider waited patiently, till the northeast wind left blowing, and there arose a southwest wind, which gently caught her up, and flew her towards her dwelling place. And when she came to her abode, she knew it, and clung to it. And we, continued the Wazir, beseech Allah, who hath rewarded the king for his singleness of heart and patience, and hath taken pity on his subjects, and blessed them with his favours, and hath vouchsafed them the king this son in his old age, after he had despaired of issue, and removed him not from the world, till he had blessed him with cool of eyes, and bestowed on him what he hath bestowed of kingship and empire, to vouchsafe unto thy son that which he hath vouchsafed unto thee of dominion and sultanship and glory. Amen. Then said the king, Praise be Allah over all praise, and thanks be to him over all thanks. There is no God, but he, the creator of all things, be the light of whose sign we know the glory of his greatness, and who giveth kingship, and command over his country to whom he willing of his servants. He chooseth of them whomso he pleased to make him his viceroy and viceregent over his creatures, and commandeth them to just and equitable dealing with them, and the maintenance of religious laws and practices, and right conduct and constancy in ordering their affairs to him, which is most acceptable to him, and most grateful to them. Whoso doth this and obeyeth the commandment of his Lord, his desire attaineth, and the orders of his God maintaineth. So Providence preserveth him from the perils of the present world, and maketh ample his recompense in the future world. For indeed he neglecteth not the reward of the righteous. And whoso doth otherwise than as Allah biddeth him, sinneth mortal sin, and disobeyeth his Lord, preferring his mundane to his supramundane weal. He hath no trace in this world, and in the next no portion, for Allah spareth not the unjust and the mischievous, nor doth he neglect any of his servants. These our wazirs have set forth how, by reason of our just dealing with them and our wise governance of affairs, Allah hath vouchsafed us and them his grace, for which it behoveth us to thank him, because of the great abundance of his mercies. Each of them hath also spoken that wherewith the Almighty inspire him concerning this matter, and they have vied one with another in rendering thanks to the Most High Lord, and praising him for his favours and bounties. I also render thanks to Allah for that I am but a slave commanded. My heart is his hand, and my tongue is his subjection, accepting that which he adjudgeth to me, and them come what may thereof. Each one of them hath said what passed through his mind on the subject of this boy, and hath set forth that which of the renewal of divine favour to us, after my years had reached the term when confidence faileth, and despair assaileth. So praised be Allah, who hath saved us from disappointment, and from the alternation of rulers, like to the alternation of night and day. For verily this was a great boon, both to them and to us. Wherefore we praise Almighty Allah, who hath given a ready answer to our prayer, and hath blessed us with this boy, and set him in high place as the inheritor of the kingship. And we entreat him of his bounty and clemency, to make him happy in his actions, prone to pious works, so he may become a king and a sultan, governing his people with justice and equity, guarding them from perilous error and frowardness, of his grace, goodness, and generosity. When the king had made an end of his speech, the sages and Olema rose and prostrated themselves before Allah, and thanked the king, after which they kissed his hands, and departed each to his own house, while Jali'ad withdrew into his palace, where he looked upon his newborn son, and offered up prayers for him, and named him Wazir Khan. The boy grew up till he attained the age of 12, when the king, being minded to have him taught in the arts and sciences, bade build him a palace amiddlemost the city, wherein were 360 rooms, and lodged him therein. Then he assigned him 3 wise men of the Olema, and bade them not be lax in teaching him day and night, and look that there was no kind of learning but they instruct him therein, so he might become first in all knowledge. He also commanded them to sit with him one day in each of the rooms by turn, and write on the door thereof that which they had taught him therein, of various kinds of lore, that they report to themselves every 7 days whatso instructions that they had imparted to him. So they went in to the prince, and stinted not from educating him day nor night, nor withheld from him aught of that which they knew. And presently there appeared in him readiness to receive instruction such as none had shown before him. Every 7th day his governors reported to the king what his son had learned and mastered, whereby Jali'ad became proficient in goodly learning and fair culture, and the Olema said to him, Never saw we one so richly gifted with understanding as is in this boy. Allah bless him, and bless thee, and give thee life of his joy in his life. When the prince had completed his 12th year, he knew the better part of every science, and excelled all the Olema and sages of his day. Wherefore his governors brought him to his sire, and said to him, Allah gladden thine eyes, O king, with this auspicious youth. We bring him to thee after he hath learned all manner of knowledge, and there is not one of the learned men of the time, nor a scientist, who hath attained to that whereto he hath attained of science. The king rejoiced in this with joy exceeding, and thanked the Almighty, prostrated himself in gratitude before Allah, to whom belong majesty and might, saying, Laud be to the Lord of his mercies incalculable. Then he called his chief wazir, and said to him, Know, O Shimas, that the governors of my son are come to tell me that he hath mastered every kind of knowledge, and there is nothing but they have instructed him therein, so that he surpasseth them in all who forewent him. What sayest thou, O Shimas? Hereat the minister prostrated himself before Allah, to whom belong might and majesty, and kissed the king's hand, saying, Loath is the ruby stone, albeit to be bedded in the hardest rock on hill, to aught but shine as a lamp, and this thy son is such a gem. His tender age hath not hindered him from being a sage, and Alhamdulillah, praised be Allah for that which he deigned bestow on him. But tomorrow I will call an assembly of the flower of the emirs and men of learning, and examine the prince, and cause him speak forth that which is in him in their presence, inshallah. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 909th night, she pursued, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when King Jali'ad heard the words of the wazirs, Shimas, he commanded the attendance of the keenest wit of the Olema, and most accomplished of the learned and sages of his dominion, and they all presented themselves on the morrow at the door of the palace, whereupon the king bade admit them. Then entered Shimas and kissed the hands of the prince, who rose and prostrated himself to the minister. But Shimas said, It behoveth not the lion whelp to prostrate himself to any of the wild beasts, nor besitteth it that light prostrate itself to shade. Quoth the prince, Whenas the lion whelp seeth the leopard, he riseth up to him and prostrated himself before him because of his wisdom, and light prostrateth itself to shade for the purpose of disclosing that which is therein. Quoth Shimas, True, O my lord, but I would have thee answer me anent whatso I shall ask thee by leave of his highness and his lieges. And the youth said, And I, with permission of my sire, will answer thee. So Shimas began and said, Tell me, what is the eternal, the absolute, and what are the two manifestations thereof, and whither of the two is the abiding one? Answered the prince, Allah, to whom belong might and majesty, is the eternal, the absolute, for he is Alpha without beginning and Omega without end. Now his two manifestations are this world and the next, and the abiding one of the two is the world to come. Thou sayest truly, and I approve thy reply, but I would have thee tell me, how knowest thou that one of Allah's manifestations is this world, and the other world to come? I know this, because this world was created from nothingness, and had not its being from any existing thing, wherefore its affairs be referable to the first essence. Moreover, it is the commodity swift of ceasing the works, where on call for requital of action, and postulated the reproduction of whatso passeth away. So the next world is the second manifestation. Now, inform me, how knowest thou that the world to come is the abiding one of the two existences? Because it is the house of requital for deeds done in this world, prepared by the eternal sans surcease. Who are the people of this world most to be praised for their practices? Those who prefer their weal in the world to come before their weal in this world. And to who is he that preferreth his future to his present welfare? He who knoweth that he dwelleth in a perishing house, that he was created but to vade away, and that after vading away he will be called to account. And indeed, were there in this world one living and abiding forever, he would not prefer it to the next world. Can the future life subsist permanently without the present? He who hath no present life hath no future life. And indeed, I liken this world and its folk, and the goal to which they fare with certain workmen, for whom an emir buildeth a narrow house, and lodgeth them therein, commanding each of them to do a certain task, and assigning to them a certain term, and appointing one to act as a steward over them. Whoso doeth the work appointed unto him, the steward bringeth him forth of that straitness. But whoso doeth not within the established time is punished. After a while, behold, they find honey exuding from the chinks of the house, and when they have eaten thereof and tasted its sweetness of savour, they slacken in their ordered task, and cast it behind their backs. So they patiently suffer the straitness and distress wherein they are, and what they know of the future punishment, whereto they are fast wending, and are content with this worthless and easily won sweetness. And the steward leaveth not to fetch every one of them forth of the house, for ill or good, with his appointed period shall he have come. Now we know that the world to be a dwelling wherein all eyes are dazed, and that each of his folk hath his set term. And he who findeth the little sweetness that is in the world, and busieth himself therewith, is the number of the lost, since he preferred the things of this world to the things of the next world. But whoso payeth no heed to this poor sweetness, and preferreth the things of the coming world to those of this world, is of those who are saved. I have heard what thou sayest of this world and the next, and I accept thine answer. But I see they are as two placed in authority over man, and needs must be content them both, and they are contrary one to the other. So the creature set himself to seek his livelihood, it is harmful to his soul in the future, and if he devote himself to the next world, it is hurtful to his body, and there is no way for him of pleasing these two contraries at once. Indeed, the quest of one's worldly livelihood with pious intent and on lawful wise is a viaticum for the quest of the goods of the world to come. If a man spent a part of his days in seeking his livelihood in this world for the sustenance of his body, and devote the rest of his day to seeking the goods of the next world, for the repose of his soul and the warding off of hurt therefrom, and indeed I see this world and other worlds as they were two kings, a just and an unjust. Asked Shimas, how so? And the youth began the tale of the two kings. There was once two kings, a just and an unjust, and this one had a land abounding in trees and fruits and herbs, but he let no merchant pass without robbing him of his monies and his merchandise. And the traders endured this with patience by reason of their profit from the fatness of the earth in the means of life, and its pleasantness, more by tokens that it was renowned for its richness in precious stones and gems. Now the just king, who loved jewels, heard of this land, and sent him one of his subjects thither, giving him much specie, and bidding him pass with it into the other realms, and buy jewels therefrom. So he went thither, and he being told to the unjust king that a merchant was come to his kingdom with much money to buy jewels withal, he sent for him to the presence, and said to him, Who art thou, and whence comest thou, and who brought thee thither, and what is thy errand? Quoth the merchant, I am of such and such a region, and the king of that land gave me money and bade me buy therewith jewels from this country. So I obeyed his bidding and came. Cried the unjust king, Out on thee! Knowest thou not my fashion of dealing with the people on my realm, and how each day I take their monies, and how thou comest thou to my country? And behold, thou hast been a sojourner here since such a time. Answered the trader, The money is not mine, not a mite of it. Nay, 'tis a trust in my hands till I bring its equivalent to its owner. But the king said, I will not let thee take thy livelihood of my land, or go out therewith, except thou ransom thyself with this money, all of it. And Scheherazade perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 910th night, she resumed, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the unjust ruler said to the trader, who came to buy jewels from his country, 'Tis not possible for thee to take thy livelihood of my land, except thou ransom thy life with this money, all of it, else shalt thou die. So the man said in himself, I am fallen between two kings, and I know that the oppression of this ruler embraceth all who abide in his dominions, and if I satisfy him not, I shall lose both life and money, whereof is no doubt, and shall fail in my errand, whilst on the other hand, if I give him all the gold, it will most assuredly prove my ruin with its owner, the other king. Wherefore no device will serve me but that I give this one a trifling part thereof, and content him therewith, and avert from myself and from the money perdition. Thus shall I give my livelihood of the fatness of this land, till I buy that which I desire of jewels, and after satisfying the tyrant with gifts, I will take my portion of the profit and return to the owner of the money with his need, trusting in his justice and indulgence, and unfearing that he will punish me for that which this unjust king taketh of the treasure, especially if it be but a little. Then the trader called down blessings on the tyrant, and said to him, O king, I will ransom myself and this specie with a small portion thereof from the time of my entering thy country to that of going forth therefrom. The king agreed to this, and left him a peace for a year, till he bought all manner jewels with the rest of the money, and returned therewith to his master, to whom he made his excuses, confessing to having saved himself from the unjust king, as before related. This just king accepted his excuse, and praised him for his wise device, and set him on his right hand in his divan, and appointed him in his kingdom an abiding inheritance and a happy life-tide. Now the just king, in the similitude of the future world, and the unjust king, that of the present world, the jewels that be in the tyrant's dominions are good deeds and pious works. The merchant, is man, and the money he hath with him is the provision appointed him of Allah. When I consider this, I know that it behoveth him who seeketh his livelihood in this world to leave not a day without seeking the goods of the world to come. So shall he content this world with that which he gaineth of the fatness of the earth, and satisfy the other world with that which he spendeth of his life in seeking after it. Are the spirit and the body alike in reward and retribution, or is the body as the luster of lust and doer of sinful deeds, and especially affected with punishment? The inclination to lust and sin may be the cause of earning reward by the withholding of the soul therewith and the repenting thereof, but the command is in the hand of him who doth what he will, and things by their contraries are distinguished. Thus sustenance is necessary to the body, but there is no body without soul, and the purification of the spirit in making clean the intention in this world, and taking thought to that which shall profit in the world to come. Indeed, soul and body are like two horses racing for a wager, or two foster brothers, or two partners in business. By the intent are good deeds distinguished, and thus the body and soul are partners in actions, and in reward and retribution, and in this they are like the blind man and the cripple of the overseer of the gardens. Asked Shimas, How so? And the prince said, Hear, O Wazir, the tale of the blind man and the cripple. A blind man and a cripple were traveling companions, and used to beg alms in company. One day they sought admission into the garden of someone of the benevolent and kind-hearted wight. Hearing their talk, took compassion on them, and carried them into his garden, where he left them, after plucking for them some of the produce, and went away, bidding them do no waste nor damage therein. When the fruits became ripe, the cripple said to the blind man, Harkye, I see ripe fruits, and long for them, but I cannot rise to eat therefore. So go thou arise, for thou art sound of either leg, and fetch us somewhat that we may eat. Replied the blind, Fie upon thee! I had no thought of them, but now that thou callest them to my mind, I long to eat of them, and I am impotent unto this, being unable to see them, so how shall we do to get them? At this moment, behold, up came the overseer of the garden, who was a man of understanding. And the cripple said to him, Harkye, O overseer, I long for somewhat of those fruits, but we are so that thou seest I am a cripple, and my mate here is stone blind. So what shall we do? Replied the overseer, Woe to you! Have ye forgotten that the master of the garden stipulated with you that ye should do nothing whereby waste or damage befall it? So take warning and abstain from this. But they answered, Needs we must get our portion of these fruits, that we may eat thereof. So tell us some device whereby we shall contrive this. When the overseer saw that they were not turned from their purpose, he said, This then is my device, O cripple. Let the blind bear thee on his back, and take thee under the tree whose fruit pleaseth thee, so thou mayest pluck what thou canst reach thereof. Accordingly, the blind man took on his back the cripple, who guided him till he brought him under the tree, and he fell to plucking therefrom what he would, and tearing at its boughs, till he had despoiled it. After which they went round about and throughout the garden, and wasted it with their hands and feet, nor did they cease from this fashion till they had stripped all the trees of the garth. Then they returned to their place, and presently up came the master of the garden, who, seeing it in this plight, was wroth with sore wrath, and coming up to them said, Woe to you! What fashion is this? Did I not stipulate with you that you should do no damage to the garden? Quoth they, Thou knowest that we are powerless to come at any of the fruit, for that one of us is crippled, and cannot rise, and the other is blind, and cannot see that which is before them. So what is our offense? But the master answered, Think ye I know not how ye wrought, and how ye had gone about to waste in my garden? I know as if I had been with thee, O blind, that thou tookest the cripple pick aback, and he showed thee the way till thou borest him to the trees. Then he punished them with grievous punishment, and thrust them out of the garden. Now the blind is the similitude of the body, which seeth not save by the Spirit, and the cripple, that of the soul, for he hath no power of motion but by the body. The garden is the works for which the creature is rewarded or punished, and the overseer is the reason which biddeth no good and forbiddeth him from evil. Thus the body and the soul are partners in reward and retribution. Which of the learned men is most worthy of praise according to thee? Well, he who is learned in the knowledge of Allah, and whose knowledge profiteth him. And who is this? Whoso is intent upon seeking to please his Lord and avoid his wrath. And which of them is most excellent? He who is most learned in the knowledge of Allah. And which is the most experienced of them? Whoso in doing according to his knowledge are most constant. And which is the purest hearted of them? He who is most assiduous in preparing for death and praising the Lord, and least of them in hope. And indeed he who penetrateth his soul with the artful ways of death is as one who looketh into the clean mirror, for that he knoweth the truth, and the mirror still increaseth in clearness and brilliance. What are the goodliest of treasures? The treasures of heaven. Which is the goodliest of the treasures of heaven? The praise of Allah and his magnificence. Which is the most excellent of the treasures of earth? The practice of kindness. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. And so do I cease my telling of this tale, till it be morrow.